Hi everyone! So in the month of January, I read 9 books. So I'm going to be splitting my January reviews up into 2 parts so I don't have to kind of rush through everything or have just a ridiculously long video. So I'm going to talk about the first 5 books that I read in January. So the first book that I finished was Saplings by Noel Streatfeild. Now I started this in 2016, I think in November, and I set it aside after getting about 30 pages in, and I wanted to read it, but at the time, it just wasn't right. It wasn't the right time for me to read it. So this was the first thing that I read, and I actually flew through this, and I really, really enjoyed this. This tells a story about a family who is affected by, I think it's World War I or World War II. I think it's World War II because they talk about the bombing. Yeah. This talks about World War II and kind of the effects that it can have on a family structure, and I just thought that this was really fantastic. It kind of did more of like a psychological study of the family that I found really, really interesting, and the effects that the war had, and just from like a historian perspective, I thought that it was great, but also I just really enjoyed this. This was like, it was more, I think it was published in 1945, so definitely a little more modern than what I'm used to, but like, yeah, I'm not a big war story person, but I think that this hit the right note with me. So if you're looking for that kind of World War II narrative, definitely check that out. And then the next book that I read was by Vita Sackville-West, which was All Passion Spent. I picked this up at BMV on my way home from like Christmas vacation, and this is my first Vita Sackville-West, and I absolutely love this. This tells the story of Lady Slane, and her husband dies, and like her whole life has been devoted to being this stateswoman's wife, and finally when he dies she has the freedom to like reconnect with who she was, and it spoke really profoundly to me. Like I really enjoyed this. It's really funny as well, like it's really satirical on kind of like societal expectations of women, and just absolutely fantastic. So definitely recommend this. I think I might pass this on to my mom because I feel like she would like this, and she does watch my videos. So Mom, I'm going to be bringing this home with me so you can read this because I think you would really like it. And then the next thing that I read is shock, gasp, something that was published last year. I know, who am I? And I read it on my Kindle, and it is Homegoing by Grassi. Amazon had this amazing sale right after like Boxing Day, and it was all of the winners of the Goodreads challenge were like $2 or $3. So I snapped up a few titles, and that was one of them, and I really, really wanted to read this. Everybody's been talking about this book. It deals basically with a family who is based out of Ghana, and it deals with the slave trade and kind of the repercussions of the slave trade as it's traced through the generations, because there's 2 sisters and they get split up, and basically it traces their generations. And this was a short novel. I think it was only like 300 pages, but it's such an ambitious project, and I really enjoyed it. I think it maybe would have benefited from a bit more character development. I think as a concept, it's absolutely fantastic. I think in certain parts, certain chapters, because every chapter switches like perspectives, and it switches generations as well. So you sometimes have this real strong emotional connection with, especially in the first 2 chapters, you have this really great emotional connection with the main, with what you think is the main characters, and then basically you never see them again, and you go through the generations, and it goes from basically the slave trade up until like modern era. So you really go through it, and some chapters were definitely stronger than others, and you definitely had more of a connection, I found, with certain chapters. And I think it was a little ambitious, and it felt a little flat, but overall I really enjoyed it, and it was really nice to read something that was published so recently, and like I can actually take part in a discussion on a book that was published recently. So definitely check that out. It was great. And then next up, I finally got to a couple that have been sitting on my shelf for ages. So I might butcher this. I got it right once, so we're gonna try this. Ludmila Petrushevskaya's There Once Lived a Woman Who Tried to Kill Her Neighbor's Baby, Scary Fairy Tales. This is a collection of short stories. She's a Russian author. I think she's still alive. She's relatively contemporary. I don't know when this was published. It's first published in English in 2009, but that's not the actual, is that the actual publishing date? I'm not sure. It's not showing up on the colophon. This was a mixed bag for me. Some stories were great, some stories weren't. As with all short story collections, I find, it's kind of, you know, some are particularly fantastic, some aren't. I really enjoyed the story. The Arm, Revenge was also really great. Hygiene, particularly like, oh, that chilled me. The God Poseidon was really good. I think those are the ones that stuck out to me the most. Yeah, the Cabbage Patch Mother was also really great. But yeah, so it was a mixed bag. Some were better than others, as it is with all short story collections. But definitely, if you're looking at like contemporary Russian and kind of like new modern classic Russian literature, check this out, because she is, I think, well renowned in Russia. I'm not an expert on this, so if I got that wrong, sorry. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about today is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. This is a bit of a letdown for me. I think I gave this 3 stars on Amazon, and it just, nothing is standing up to Rebecca for me by Daphne du Maurier. It just felt so overdone and so overly dramatic, and like, it was fine, it was entertaining, but I didn't love it. And like, it just, yeah, I don't know. Daphne du Maurier, I've read Rebecca, obviously, loved it. Then I read Frenchman's Creek and was like, this is garbage. This was just a step up from Frenchman's Creek for me. And I know a lot of people really like this, but it just, I don't know, it just lacked, apologies if you like this book, but it just lacked something for me. It was so contrived and so like, it felt ingenuine, and I think that was my issue with it, is that it felt very ingenuine. And I think that might be my issue with du Maurier's writing in general, is that, like, judging from what I've read so far, is that she's all about the sensationalist and the sensational novel, and it kind of like, it falls a bit flat with me. So sadly, this was a bit of a miss for me for Daphne du Maurier. So those were the first 5 books that I read in January. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have read any of these books, and I do have another review video coming up with the next 4 books that I read that month, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye!